Hi, everybody. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you how to know if someone is in a cult. And sometimes that's difficult for friends and families to realize, hey, my son, my daughter, she's in a cult. Or even yourself realizing because the red flags are popping up, but a lot of times you're in denial thinking, this ain't happening. This happens in Jonestown. This happens in Waco, but it should never happen, you know, in places like Australia. I've run into so many people that are like, wow, you're in Australia and you lived here for 13 years. Yes, it's beautiful, but there's some really deadly things there too, like snakes and spiders. And there's a lot of cults in Australia as well. Okay. So if you're not educated on the doctrine, then you're already deceived. And people can tell you, hey, I'm Christian. And you can go with that till you get there and you find out that, wait a minute, I wasn't taught that kind of stuff. So I'm going to share these it's 11 questions, and just you got to be truthful when you answer them. It's either a yes or no. There's nothing in between saying, well, let me think about it, because being in something that is so you're under such mental manipulation of leadership or the pastoral uh, leadership. um, uh, if you let it linger, then they have more time to continue to kind of to freeze you and then unfreeze you and then lock it in, and then you think, well, I'm okay. I'm not really in that, and then you start living in denial. Okay, and that's what I did. And I'm like, I just wanted to be married and happy and have a home, and just me and my husband and our little dog, and I never intended for that. I wasn't there to say, oh, I don't want those people in my life because they're a cult, you know. And a lot of people joke around, and there'll be people that joke around, they really actually know that they're there in it, and they'll say, yeah, we're in a cult. Some people that you talk to that has survived Waco or Jonestown, they can tell you that a lot of times in the back of their mind they know something's not right, but they continue to believe the lies of one certain person or leadership. Okay, so here's one of the questions you need to ask yourself. um, do the members tend to exhibit a sudden and extreme devotion to a certain leader or the group? Okay. And they might take their previous held beliefs and drop them completely because they're being loyal to that person. Let's say Kenneth Copeland. They're being loyal to him rather than loyal to what is actually being read in the Bible. Okay. So they are becoming faithful followers. Okay. And that's how they're recruited. Number two is, are members often, are you like living together in communal housing? Let me tell you what, it doesn't have to look like Jonestown. It does not have to look like Waco. Okay. You could just be on property with people that you know and love, and you're thinking, well, we're just sharing land. Or it's going to be one nice little happy little farmland community. But it doesn't, it starts out that way, but it can end badly. Okay. So, and that's the sad part, because you start to form relationships with these people that are your friends and family. They are a part of your family because when you've left everything, being in another country, you go to another country to be a part of their lives. You would never in a million years say, well, they're going to just outright deceive me and I just know it. I never, not in a million years would ever think they would do that. And I don't blame them personally. I blame the system. I blame the doctrine. And that's where I put the blame. And those people that are in that leadership that continue that abuse and continue to go down that slide and say, I'm father this and that, and I'm apostolically gifted, and you got to give this much. You know what? They're pathological liars. They're lying to you. They're not being truthful. And the only one that can be truthful is, you've got to be truthful to yourself to say, look, this is happening. Am I going to allow it to continue to happen, or I'm just going to get out? Okay. So you're either going to enable their behavior, or you're going to jump ship. Okay. And that's what happens. A lot of people's eyes open. They're like, well, wait a minute. I don't want to be in this. Why do you think they ran through the jungles in Jonestown? They knew He was at the breaking point, and people were dying because he really thought God told him we got to all wipe everybody out so we could all go to heaven. Okay. And so it turned very tragic, and people died because of one psychopath's belief that he instilled it in just enough followers to control 900 and some people. Okay. Can you imagine? He had that much power. And look at Waco. Look at the mess Waco was in. We talk about all the blame and the blame lies at the ATF, the blame lies in the government. But what the hell? You don't think that the blame didn't lie on, Vernon Howe, David Koresh, he calls himself? He's having sex with their wives and he's having sex with their children. Okay. That ain't normal. I don't care, regardless. I know there's other religions out there that believe in polygamy, but for God's sakes, when you're in America, the word is no. No. Okay. No. So Mormonism, Scientology, all this BS where you got to have these spiritual children and just forget it now. We're not married anymore. We're going to take another wife. Okay. That is crazy. Okay. It is uncalled for. And then the fornication and the sexual things that go on in these churches, and you're like, you just shake your head. You're like, this ain't happening, but it is. So as you start to deepen your involvement, your whole world is completely centered around them. And you don't smile anymore at other people. You don't wave to other people that go by. You don't sit and have a coffee or a beer. No, now you're the outsiders. They're the insiders. They're the chosen ones. Okay. So that's what they do. And then they start their own little kind of speech jargon and patterns and mannerisms. And it almost sounds like it's from a script, like day in, day out. Like, my God, we're going through this again. And they'll repeat certain scriptures over and over and over for hours and hours. And you're like, my God, you're almost to the point you want to go to sleep, because it is so mind-numbing that's what they want to do is condition your brain. And people are just falling asleep, saliva coming out of their mouths or falling asleep or snoring. And then you get in trouble if you go to sleep. Because, see, it's the devil's putting you to sleep. No, that person's putting you to sleep because they're just laying on loaded language and just absolutely destroying your brain. That's what's going on. Okay. So can you imagine those poor people sitting under Bible study for 13 hours? No sleep. Sleep deprivation is one thing they use to control people. Okay. Then the members, they stop thinking, independently, and they rely on leadership. They rely on that pastor. They rely on that church. They rely on everything, including, okay, I got to go to them if we have this problem. If my kid's sick, I got to go to them. We don't go to the doctor no more, and it becomes such a religious right that nobody else exists. They're in their own little bubble. Okay. And that's what happened with me. I was actually in my own little bubble in my own world thinking that this is my family, to the point that I was even shunning my own natural family and my children. You see how crazy that gets? Okay. It's a form of manipulation. So, anything that you had a hobby with, let's say you rode horses or you drew pictures or you painted or you danced or, rode motorcycles, whatever you did, you have no more interest in that no more. Now we just go to church and that's all we do is we listen to him go over and over and over, pretty much talking about himself. And, and the same scripts over and over. And it's usually a doomsday type, they want to instill fear in you or intimidate you. They want to make you feel that they can control you. So the really worst part about it is they isolate you and they make you feel guilty if you don't go to church on Wednesday, if you don't go to church on Sunday. You're a really bad Christian because you didn't go. And there's one time that we'd pack up, me and my husband would sneak off just to go fishing. And unfortunately, we run into the former pastor, and he would give us a side eye like we were the worst people in the world. But yet he can go traipse off and go to Las Vegas and go look at porn magazines. Now, you tell me which is right. Okay. They make rules for you, but they don't They don't have the same rules. They have no rules. They're anything goes with them, and you gotta adhere to what they say. That's why they have lots of cars. That's why they have lots of money. That's why their kids have lots of money, is because they're just telling you to give and give and give, and you're going to give till it hurts. They ain't going to be hurting. You are. Okay. They get rich off your vulnerability. They want to isolate you from other former friends and family because that's how they control you. If they can control you and manipulate you, then they can keep you under their thumb. That's what they do. People find ways to justify the leader's attitude. So if he's stripping off his shirt in front of a bunch of front of a bunch of women, and and let's say it's a Memorial Day, and you would that's the last thing you would think of, okay? Is running around with nothing on, and you're supposed to be saying that you're a prophet of God or you're a man of God. And it's one thing when you're outside of it and people's running around in their shorts, t-shirt and drinking beer, whatever. But you see, now you become the hypocrite because you're the one stripping your shirt off in front of a bunch of women, okay? Or talking about them, or saying things that are totally, absolutely inappropriate. And so that's why people get guarded, and they're like, nope, you're not playing Playboy with me. And that happened in the churches that I was in, that the pastor could mac on the women and kiss deeply behind their neck and touch them inappropriately, and you're like, nope, it's not happening with me anymore. So they will literally view former members as evil or wrong, to the point that we had a guy that he would literally tell his members that if they got out of line, he would put a curse on them, that he would kill their children with death or sickness, that he would make sure they would never get another job, that he would find every way to slander them to keep them from working, to the point that he instilled so much fear in their families that they stayed there. Now that is occultic control. Okay. Telling someone that I am going to put a curse on you because you're not going to do what I say, and because you can't freely think for yourself or critically think for yourself, when you are speaking up about things that are truthful, they don't like it and they try to stop it. So they will view you as bad. You're bad now. You're evil. Okay. You are the evil people. And you need, and they need to warn everybody because you're the troublemaker. But actually, it's just the opposite. They're the ones that want to control a small a group of people so that they can capitalize on their weakness and vulnerability. And so that's it for today, guys. Be truthful when you answer those questions, and you're asking yourself, is this going on in the church that I attend or the group that I attend? And you'll come to find out that when you start to admit that, yeah, that's going on, or no, it's not, when you either say yes or no to it and you start to critically think, then now you're exercising your own brain, your own will to say, look, I've got a right to ask these questions. Why is this happening? Why is it that the pastor is acting inappropriately on the pulpit, talking about things that have nothing to do with the Bible? And they will make excuses that they can talk that way or act that way. Okay. But that's pretty much it for today, and I will talk to you some more about that later on. But I wanted to share that with you, that these are some of the signs that you need to truthfully ask yourself: is this happening? And if you see it within the nucleus of these places that you are, worshiping, if you see it within there, then that's a huge red flag, and you need to be very aware, because um, the way they can manipulate you within like 30 days. Okay. Some people get manipulated in 2 weeks because they condition your brain to believe they have absolute authority, that God's talking to them, and don't you dare question. Don't question, and don't you dare say anything wrong about it, because see, now they are so holier than thou that they can put a curse on you. It's almost like you're in a horror flick, and you're holding a silver cross up so that you know they don't come at you. And so they become very paranoid, and they will justify their paranoia. And but what they're doing is they feel that they're exempt or above the law. They don't, and you will never see them call the law. Okay, that's another thing. If something happens and there's something going on and it could be a detriment to the whole community, they don't call the police because they think the police are evil. They actually want to defund the police. They don't want nothing to do with the police. And police are not bad people. Waco, the people of Waco were told that you don't contact the police. And they were the ones that had the weapons. They were the ones that was literally creating this scenario of, if they come at us, then we gotta eliminate ourselves from the face of the earth. And look what happened. That's abuse of power. And that is a sign of a very destructive cult. I'll be talking about that later on, some of the stuff that I experienced when I was there in Queensland. And um, but for now, that's the question you need to ask yourself. So you guys have a good day and stay strong and don't stop questioning. It's not wrong to question. It's not wrong to critically think for yourself. It's healthy to ask those questions. And it is not wrong to say, look, hey, I was in that. I don't want to be in that no more. And once you start to see that, you start to separate yourself from that, knowing that, hey, I was under all that for so long. And now I'm free from that. And I look at the pros and the cons now and I'm thinking, wow, there's a big difference. And then you'll start to realize, you'll start to say, hey, my life is better now because now I could be proactive in many things that I wanted to do that they didn't want you to do or say. You know, silence is like a cancer. They want to shut your lips, throw away the key and tell you don't talk about us. You know, and they use threats and intimidation to keep you um, under their thumb. So don't let them do that. You know, you are individual. God gives you a will and a choice. There's so many religions out there, and people they believe different things. And the worst thing you can do is say, "My religion is superior over yours." Um, that's the worst form of cult control. Is to say, "I'm going to force you to believe something that maybe you don't want to believe." You know, that's why God gives you free will and choice. He's not telling you you need to worship me. He's giving you choice. Okay. You have a choice. There were two crosses on each side, or one on each side. One denied, one accepted. He gives you choice. And that's the problem with the world today. They feel that they are the chosen ones, and you don't question. So we'll talk again next time, and I'll be sharing some of the things that I experienced and how I started to realize that there was a repetitive pattern of cult abuse. And I found myself running back in that same circle for many years. And it wasn't so much my husband, because he enabled their behavior. He wasn't the one controlling it. He enabled their behavior, thinking that we're one big happy family. Don't be the quote crapster. Don't be causing. But so when you start to think for yourself and say, look, I don't agree. That's when it gets bad, because now you're not this subservient, you know, modest woman who has her head covering and her hair back in perfect braids and her long dresses on, and she's got her hands folded and she's being good. Okay. Good don't get it. Good don't get you to heaven. So um, remember those things the next time that somebody does that to you, because that is a huge form of abuse. Deserve